Hi, and welcome to another video on DetroitLions.com with Mike O'Hara and Charlie Sanders. You want to know what these are for, right?
Yeah, I would.
Well, one of us is a longtime sports writer now working for DetroitLions.com, a media member, and one is a world-class athlete and a Hall of Fame tight end. And I just want the people out there to know which is which. Now,
Okay.
Take a wild guess out there, folks. Which one's the writer and which one is the Hall of Fame tight end?
Good, good.
That would be the Hall of Fame tight end. You know, Charlie, we had Super Bowl 47 over the weekend. I know you made an appearance, you know, as a befitting of a Hall of Famer. When you get out in public in events like that, you know, end of the season, playing for the championship, what do people ask you the most?
Well, not so much a question. I mean, they're polite enough to know that you're not in it.
Right.
You know.
Well, they're not going to grill you. But what do they want to
Exactly.
know about the Lions and what do they want to know about pro football?
Well, they kind of basically, as far as the organization is concerned, as far as the Lions are concerned in particular, you know, they kind of sympathize, empathize with your season, as most of the fans in Detroit are doing right now.
Sounds like before the cocktail hour.
Exactly. And so, you know, the one thing that we have in common is that usually the people or the players that you're talking with, they aren't in it either. So
Right.
It doesn't matter how close we got, we just didn't get in it. So we have a lot of wait till next year or things will get better next year, a lot of positive things.
And about the fans, too, that you run into, that obviously they've got questions, too.
No question. And those are the ones that you have a difficult time conversing with because they want answers and you can't give them just anything. They're looking for something positive, but they're also looking for the truth. And again, those are the difficult ones that you have to confront because, you know, they are fans.
Well, we've had news already this week. Titus Young, no big surprise. He was released on Monday, the first day, you know, that NFL teams could release players. I've said before, I would have hung on to him till the very last second, but you've been in on this before. Yeah. Good move now, a move that had to be made, or could they have waited?
Well, all three. And somewhere, you know, in the higher rankings, they made the decision this was the best time. And, you know, you can't argue with it. I think it was a situation that wasn't going to turn out positive. In the end, the one thing is for sure, this was the best move for Titus. And then after that, it was the organization. Titus came first.
Right.
And the organization has always been concerned about what's best for him. So it was time to cut ties.
You know, Charlie, you played a long time and you've been with this organization since 1968. What is the difference between football character and social character? In other words, you know, guys have problems off the field. Everybody does. But on the field, in the locker room, they have athletic character. How important is that?
Well, one doesn't interfere with winning.
Yeah.
You know, the off-field character, from a negative standpoint, that's going to affect you down the road. That's the player that you're stuck with. That's the guy deep down underneath that you have to line up in the trenches with. And you want to know you can count on a guy like that. The biggest problem I think an organization has is during the offseason with guys that have character issues because you don't know if they're going to return or come back from war, you know, from the war, or how they're going to come back or how they're going to affect the team, you know, once they're at home.
Well, especially in this era now where the commissioners are suspending guys for 2 games, 4 games, 8 games, a little different than it was 20 years ago where you could, you know, we can almost laugh about it sometimes, and I'm not saying it's a laughing issue, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't affect the team on the field so much.
Well, and that's the difference between the game now and the game the way it used to be. Guys come in, they do their time, and they go back, quote, home. Whereas before, this was home.
Yeah.
A guy was here year-round. So the Lions lose contact with them. They don't have any control over what they do. They don't have any contact with their involvement, you know, off the field. So it presents a problem.
You've been on both sides of it now. As an assistant coach, you've been in the front office, you were a player. You know, the first wave of cuts is coming. Stephen Peterman, it was announced on Tuesday that the Lions have cut ties with the guy. He's been mostly a starting right guard since 2006 when they got him on waivers. How tough is it for players right now, but then how important is it for teams right now to start reshaping the roster to get ready for free agency and get ready for the draft?
Well, for the teams throughout the league, you know, this is just common every day, every year activity. You know, they're getting ready for the free agency. So they have a list. They have an idea of what teams are going to let what guy, you know, go. So, you know, they can get ahead of the game. But as far as the player is concerned, it's always tough because you're going to always think, you know, you got the short end whenever that that doorbell rings or that phone rings and they say, you know, we're going to let you go.
But you were a 7-time Pro Bowl player and on the way to a Hall of Fame career. Did you ever worry about getting cut?
You know what? When I came in as a rookie, I had a 3-year no cut.
Yeah.
But I didn't know the no cut didn't mean I couldn't get cut. I couldn't get cut after I made the team.
So you didn't
so
know
the language is a little confusing.
You didn't know enough to worry?
I didn't know enough to worry about it. So, you know, it turned out great for me. But, you know, today, you know, with the way the game is, the free agencies and the dollars involved and the ability to shuffle players, you know, it's a little more stressful on players today. Usually when you made the team, the only way you were not going to be with that team is if an injury came along or something like that.
Well, there's one thing about it. You make a lot of money these days, and that's great, and you can say I've got a lot of money, but then I still want to make a lot more, and so it works both ways. Before we wrap it up right here, we had the Hall of Fame vote on Saturday down in New Orleans. 7 new members. One played briefly here in Detroit, Curly Culp. You played against, you know, David Robinson of the Green Bay Packers. What's it like that day when you know you're a finalist, when you're not sure if your name's going to be called, and then it finally is? How stressful is that?
Well, it's very stressful, you know. But fortunately for me, I got talked into going where they were having the voting, and I didn't know any better. I didn't know what I was going to do if they didn't call my name. But it is a stressful situation. You wait and you wait and wait, depending on how you're going in, where you're going in first time, whether you're going in after the 5th time, whether you're going in after 25 years as I did. It's still an exciting time, and the anticipation it takes hold of you. And when it finally happens, you know, it's just unbelievable.
And finally, you can tell these people out there, when you go to Canton there in August and you put on that yellow jacket.
Nothing like it. Nothing in the world like it. People ask me what is it like, and I told them if I try to explain it to you, you wouldn't understand.
I think we'll leave it at that. As you can tell, I'm the writer. That's Charlie Sanders, the Hall of Fame tight end. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you again.